I had read in a letter from the ACLU that there was an article in the Houston Chronicle from 2007 that talked about in Houston there was no reduction in officer-involved shootings or any reduction in people being killed by lethal force by police. Now that's a 2007 article, the Taser effect, 2 years after HPD armed itself with stun guns. Questions linger over how and how often the weapon is being used. And that's Houston Chronicle, January 14, 2007. So the question is not meant to be argumentative, it's more meant to be, is this something you guys have come across, and what's your response to that?
I think it's important for me to make sure I'm very clear on this point. Taser International is not advocating that a taser is a replacement for a firearm. I think to advocate that is somewhat of a slippery slope, and here's what I mean by that. In situations where an officer has good cover and capability to deploy a device like ours, I advocate them to do that. If an officer is in a situation where they're going to get at risk to themselves or further risk to the suspect, I'm not sure that that's necessarily feasible. But what you're talking about there in the Houston aspect of it is really covered under policy and training. That is something that Taser International stays out of the policy realm, and there's a reason why. I'm a manufacturer. I'm not the chief of police. That is his responsibility to work with you on developing that policy, not for me. What I see in agencies that I've been doing this for 12 years, what I see in agencies that have deployed this device, I will tell you that I've seen officers deploy it in very dangerous situations, and they have saved suspect life. But I've also seen officers deploy it in very dangerous situations where it didn't turn out so pleasantly. And I think I need to make that very clear to this community, is that if you think in a taser as an apples and oranges, or an apples and apples for a firearm, it's not. A taser is a less than lethal option, that if an officer has good cover and backup, they can use that device. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily always going to be in that environment. It definitely gets deployed where there isn't backup, and it's a lethal situation when an individual has a weapon over now. So unfortunately, I can't really speak in depth to why Houston hasn't seen some of those reductions. That could be a policy, that could be a training issue.
Okay, in terms of policy, my last question, sorry, I know we're at
Sorry.
I read also that there were certain departments that were requiring as a part of policy and training to have officers who were going to be armed with a taser actually be tased themselves as part of the training process. And then there was a departure from that. So I don't know if you could speak to that in terms of assessing the policy of training that has worked or has not worked. Has that been a part of the significant number of training?
I'm a firm believer, as I mentioned, I've been there for 12 years, I'm a firm believer in understanding what I'm out here telling you about, and I would never want to stand in front of this commission and tell you I think it's the greatest thing for your community to deploy, and myself not being willing to figure out what it's about. When we did this, got to remember where we were at early in our days. This was a system that was not widespread in the community. It was not something that law enforcement understood very well, and quite frankly, there was a convincing that needed to occur. So I would have a SWAT officer come in. That SWAT officer had seen the older technology. I think a lot of people have seen some of that older technology. Clint Eastwood used it in one of his movies. It did not have the effectiveness of what our X26 does. So departments like LAPD had deployed Tasertron, which is a product prior to us coming into the market. That technology did not have the waveform and the energy capability of actually contracting the muscles of the pain compliance device. So that's their history from where they came through. So we had to convince them that this is not the same technology. We're at a different place in our evolution, I would definitely say. We still require our master instructors, and if you're to be certified as a trained trainer, we still require you to follow that protocol, where you must get experience the taser. If you're going to speak as an expert from that level, most of our master instructors get called into trial to testify about the use of force. We do not advocate that we do not have that in our recommendation as part of our training protocols to the department, because that's, again, for them to decide on how they train their officers. All right, long answer.
Petra Dejesus.
Maybe I just wasn't clear, but I have a taser on here with warnings on it for instructor and user warning, risk, liability, release, and covenant not to sue. And I just want to get back to high-risk populations. That's how it's listed here. ECD use on a pregnant, infirm, elderly, small child, or low body mass index person could increase the risk of death or serious injury. ECD use has not been scientifically tested on these populations. The ECD use should not be used on members of these populations unless the situation justifies possible higher risk for death or serious injury. So, in fact, is there a warning on the use of infirm, pregnant?
So we're clear on the way that our environment is today is that we have to warn on everything. So
He's not a
Warning
doctor.
is
He's
different
not a
than-
doctor. He's a businessman.
A warning is different than a policy understanding, okay? So a warning is out there to say, look, at the end of the day, I can't tell you what's gonna happen to a pregnant female.
He has no
That is
idea.
not the way that you actually do medicine stuff.
None.
I don't go out, it's illegal for you to actually go out and kind of do those kind of testings. So understand that when we're out there and we're doing that aspect of it, we're telling them that that is not where we would obviously desire you to use our technology. So it's a little bit, I understand your point, but it's not a policy, it's a recommendation to the departments that we recommend, and that's not our target group.
Is it a true statement though that, well, I understand it's not been scientifically tested on the populations of pregnant women, but what about low body mass index? Do you test on that? Any studies?
And I'm not sure what they're meaning there by the low body mass index, to be honest with you. If we're talking about an area where you're talking about a very, very skinny person, we obviously don't have a lot of muscle in that aspect, and that's where our systems are not going to be as effective.
So, and then the sensitive body part hazard, when possible, avoid intentionally targeting the ECD on sensitive areas of the body, such as the head, throat, chest, breast, or known pre-existing injury areas without legal justification. The preferred target areas are below the neck area for the back shots and the lower center mass below the chest for the front shot. The preferred target areas increase start to heart safety margin distance. And that's what I was trying to get at. Officers are trained to shoot at the largest mass, is my understanding, but this is recommending that they don't shoot at the largest mass. They shoot from behind, or they shoot at the lower portion of the chest. Is that the way?
And I think my statement holds true. Our most effective rating from deployment of the taser is going to be from those large muscle mass areas. You avoid controversy, and again, that training bulletin is not a shall not or a do not. That is very clear in our training bulletin. We're not saying you shall not and do not, because the officers are going to have to use that in very dynamic situations that dictate that they may deploy in that area. We're not telling them that they shall not. It avoids controversy, and it's not the most effective reason for deploying, quite frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you.